Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 18th, 2024 meeting of the Portsmouth Planning Board. First item, I'd like Mr. Simonis to sit for Ms. Magala.
Sounds good.
And Mr. Bone, will you sit for Manager Connor?
Well,
And with that, we have election of officers as the first item on the agenda. Need nominations for chair and vice chair.
I make a motion to appoint Mr. Chelman as the chair of the planning board for the next year.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd like to make the motion for Mr. Mahana to be vice chair.
I second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thanks, boss.
Approval of the minutes. Folks gone through the December 21st minutes. Any comments, revisions? Real good.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are adopted. We have two items for determination of completeness. The first is a request of Portsmouth Submarine Marine Association as owners for property at 569 Submarine Way, requesting amended site plan approval to construct approximately 1,588 square foot addition attached to the existing visitor center building and associated site improvements. This property is located on Assessor's Map 209, Lot 87, and lies in the single residence or SRB district. Motion to accept that as complete.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Accepted. We have another request for Prospect North 815 LLC as owners for property at 815 Lafayette Road, requesting site plan approval for the demolition of the existing building and tower along Sagamore Creek and construction of 3 4-story, 24-unit multifamily buildings for a total of 72 units with first floor parking. This project will include associated site improvements such as parking, pedestrian access, community space, utilities, stormwater management, lighting, and landscaping. And a development site conditional use permit under section 10.5B 43.10. This property is Assessor's Map 245, Lot 3, and is in the Gateway Corridor, G1 District. Motion to accept is complete.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Accepted. First public hearing, we have the one I just described, Portsmouth Submarine Marine Memorial Association as owners for the property at 569 Submarine Way, requesting amended site plan approval to construct approximately 1,588 square foot addition attached to the existing visitor center building with associated site improvements. Again, this property is on Assessor Map 209, Lot 87, is in the SRB district. Mr. Shagnon, are you here to present for this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. John Shagnon from Haley Ward, representing the Portsmouth Submarine Memorial Association. With me here tonight is Evan Mullen, project architect, Phil Monk, Ken Herrick, and Kenneth Dachoff from the Portsmouth Submarine Memorial Association. The project is on tax map 209, lot 87, at 569 Submarine Way, as you mentioned. We're asking for amended site plan approval here tonight for a 1,588 square foot addition to the existing museum. This addition, there is ample room for parking on the site to handle the addition. The site plan set has the usual plans with a survey plan and existing conditions. There's a boundary plan, the existing conditions, orthophoto plan, an existing conditions plan, and then C4 is the site plan, and the site plan shows the addition to the museum building in blue. It shows proposed sidewalks in green and proposed landscaping and bike racks in a mauve color. So that is the extent of what the application is here asking for tonight. There's minor utility changes. On the next sheet, reworking a water line to go around the proposed addition. On the drainage plan, there is a catch basin which will be removed, and then a yard drain will be installed, and the pipe will go around the building addition. There's a building lighting plan, and then the usual details. The project received a variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustment on October 17th of 2023 for the use and received technical advisory committee approval on December 5th, 2023 for all the other site plan elements. The staff memo lists proposed conditions, and those are acceptable to the applicants. I'll keep it short and ask if you have any questions about the project, but we ask that you approve this here tonight. Thank you.
Questions of the applicant?
This plan does not include, sorry.
Yes.
This plan does not include any demolition of the existing Welcome Center or any portion of it, right?
Correct. There's no building demolition, just sidewalk removal and catch basin removal and pipes.
Yes.
But as a follow-up to that, you are connecting the two buildings, so
Yes.
there'll be a pathway through.
Yes, they will be connected. People will be redirected to a new lobby, which will be between the new and the old building, but they'll be connected. And the utilities will be connected internally also.
John, there was some question about the water line, and the city attorney proposed an arrangement. Is you guys, the applicant, acceptable to that proposal as well?
Yes, that's in the staff memo, that's one of the conditions that we would move forward, and the applicant is agreeable to work with the city to provide what is necessary for the city to be comfortable with that.
Okay. Any other questions? No other questions? I'll open up the public hearing. Public hearing's open. Anybody here or on Zoom wish to speak to, for, or against this application? One more call. Anybody wish to speak to, for, or against this application? I'm going to close the public hearing unless somebody raises their hand. Yes. Did you wish to speak, John?
Nope.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Board,
I'll make a motion to grant the amended site plan approval with the following conditions.
Findings of fact.
Oh, finding of facts, okay. We always do this.
I'm trying to train you.
I appreciate that. Where is that?
It's in the memo,
I'm reading it. Go ahead, Beth.
page 5.
Go ahead, Beth. Oh, I'll make a motion to find that the site plan application meets the requirements set forth in the site plan regulations, section 2.9, evaluation criteria, and adopt the findings of facts
presented.
as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We keep going.
I'd like to make a motion to grant the amended site plan approval with the following conditions, but they've already said they did, but the applicant will provide documentation as issued and recorded license authorization to utilize the existing water line easement terms and conditions to be approved by the planning and sustainability director.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And Greg, if you could pull your microphone closer for future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
We have a request of Prospect North 815 LLC as owners for property at 815 Lafayette Road, requesting site plan review approval for the demolition of an existing building and tower along Sagamore Creek and the construction of 3 4-story, 24-unit multifamily buildings for a total of 72 units with first-floor parking. This project will include associated site improvements such as parking, pedestrian access, community space, utilities, stormwater management, lighting, and landscaping, and a development site conditional use permit under section 10.5B 43.10. This property is on Assessor's Map 245, Lots 3 and 4, and lies within the Gateway Corridor G1 district. Who is here to present this application?
Thank you. Neil Hansen with Ty and Bond. Other members of the project team that are here this evening, Mike Brown, owner and applicant, Patrick Crimmins, also with Ty and Bond, and FX Bruton, the attorney for the project, is also here. So we were here in front of the planning board in June of last year for conceptual consultation for this project. Since that time, we've Met with both TAC and Conservation Commission for both work sessions and regular meetings. We had a site walk with the Conservation Commission and have received recommendations of approval from both of those committees in November and December of last year. So the site is the former home of the HEB radio station, which is no longer in operation on the site. The property is 19.6 acres in total and located in the Gateway G1 district. And the property is primarily bound to the south by Sagamore Creek and to the west by Route 1 and the Lafayette Plaza. If you could go to the next sheet, please, Peter. The portion of the site that is part of this application tonight is a approximately 4-acre portion of the site that is closest to Lafayette Road. That is where the existing radio station building is located in the center of that area, along with existing parking areas, and there's an existing leach field and septic tank. A large portion of that is within the wetland buffer, which we will be removing from the buffer as part of this project and as part of the request for the wetland conditional use permit. If you go to the next sheet. This is a wetland an impervious surface exhibit we had included as part of the package, showing the existing impervious surfaces within the wetland buffer on the top, and then the proposed conditions down there on the bottom, showing all of the impervious surfaces have been removed from the 100-foot buffer as part of this project. It's approximately 11,700 square feet of impervious surface that will be removed from the buffer as part of this project, which I'll touch on more when I get to the wetland CUP criteria. You go to the next sheet. So here's the proposed site plan. It's 3 4-story multifamily buildings. There'll be 24 units in each building for a total of 72 units. Each building also has ground floor parking, and the building 3 furthest to the right of this page here also has a 1-story leasing office. It's about 1,200 square feet. The project met with, or received 2 variances from the zoning board at their meeting in September of last year. The variances were for front lot line build out of less than 50%. And the second variance was for facade orientation to permit the orientation is not parallel with the front property line. Access to the project is off of Lafayette Road via a 26-foot wide drive aisle, which is a little bit outside the norm, but that was at the request of the fire department. Due to the dead end access for the site, they wanted that extra width, and then there's a gravel turnaround area at the end to accommodate the fire truck. The project provides 121 total parking spaces, where 109 are required by ordinance. 72 of those spaces are within the building footprints, and 49 of those are exterior spaces. We also have 4 EV spaces towards the rear of the site. Trash removal for the project, there's 2 dumpster locations, one between buildings 1 and 2. I should mention I am referring to buildings 1, 2, and 3, so 1 closest to Lafayette Road and 3 farthest away. And then there's another set of dumpsters down past the far end of building 3. Also located between each of the buildings is outdoor space, which will be for use by the residents of these buildings. Those areas are outside of that 100-foot buffer and will be outside of the community space area that I will also discuss in a little bit. If you go to the next sheet, please, Peter. So grading and stormwater for the site. So currently, the site primarily just sheet flows right towards the Sagamore Creek. There's no stormwater collection or treatment on site currently. So the proposed project will implement stormwater treatment for the new impervious surfaces. There's a drainage study and long-term operation maintenance plan that were part of the submission. We will be utilizing a subsurface filtration unit as well as a rain garden to meet the stormwater treatment criteria as part of this project. And we will require an AOT permit as well as wetland and shoreline permits from NHDES. If you go to the next sheet. Utilities, all our utility coordination was done with TAC as part of that process. We've also coordinated with Eversource on running new underground electrical service through the site. It's currently overhead into the site, and we'll be going underground through the site before reconnecting to the overhead system on the street, and then as well as the rear of the shopping center next door to us. And then as all the other utility connections were coordinated with DPW and the fire department. And then we will also need a sewer connection permit from DES prior to construction as well. And if you go to the next sheet. So we had included a photometric plan in the package. All the lighting for this project is going to be building mounted, and it will all be facing away from the creek. So it'll all be on the parking lot side and then in between the buildings. Having no light on the rear of the buildings facing the creek was something that the Conservation Commission was very much in favor of, and we had we're happy to not have any lighting on the rear of the building. Go to the next sheet. So this is the proposed landscaping plan for the project. Up in the parking area, we have some evergreen shrubs or trees along the property line between this site and the plaza, with a few trees within the parking field. The main part of this planting plan is focused on that wetland buffer. In the center of the site there, we'll see a lot of trees and shrubbery. That is the area where the existing impervious surfaces are all located. So there's a pretty robust planting plan there with trees, shrubs, and then some native grass mixes. That the areas within the 100-foot buffer will be allowed to be in more of a natural state. There will be a mowing plan through the early growing process to make sure we keep the invasive species out, but then they'll be allowed to grow in a more natural state. The area closest to the building, which will be for the residents living in these three buildings, will be a more maintained landscape area. But again, everything in the buffer we're going to keep in a more natural state. There's also a wood chip trail that will be going along the top of the bank there as part of our community space, and that was done in a way that, as it not being a paved surface, is an allowed use within the buffer, and will really complement the rest of the landscape plan very well. Go to, and this was also included in the package. This is this was an invasive species inventory that we had done. There was a report that went along with this, and we had broken the site up into a number of different areas and identified the different invasive species that were within each zone, and then there's a plan for doing some invasive removal as part of this project along that wetland buffer. And then this is the community space exhibit that was part of the plan. I'll get into a little bit more detail as this is part of the development site conditional use permit. But we did do a lot of work on this throughout the TAC and Conservation Commission process with both of those two committees as well as city staff on coming to a community space plan that we feel is a really nice amenity to the city, will provide access along the creek. And then we also have a potential future connection out to the properties to the east. If those ever come before these land use boards, there will be an opportunity to connect that trail out through there. So as far as permits tonight, the site plan review permit is the first one that we're requesting tonight. As part of that permit, we had also included a traffic impact study that was part of your package. That study was part of a submission that we made to NHDOT. They have already provided us review comments related to our submission to them. The traffic study shows that the proposed project is expected to generate 45 trips during the weekday morning and 52 trips during the weekday afternoon peak hours. The capacity analysis showed that the study area intersections will continue to operate at the same level of service under build conditions as compared to the no build conditions for both 2025 opening year and the 2035 design year. It was determined that a southbound left turn bay is warranted. However, the existing center turn lane can accommodate the southbound left turn traffic. And the comment we received from NHDOT was that they found the traffic study is acceptable and determined that no change is required to the US 1 lane configuration for this project. So For conditional use permits, we are requesting two. One is for the development site, conditional use. Development site standards are allowed by conditional use permit approval from the planning board, and a development site is a lot or group of continuous lots owned or controlled by the same person, assembled for the purpose of a single development and including more than one principal building or building type. And as our proposed development includes more than one principal building, and then also the other component of that is we have community space on a separate lot. CUP is required for development site standards. So as I've mentioned already, the community space is required as part of this and is required to be 10% of the lot area. So to get to this 10%, we had a number of challenges with this lot that we had to work through with the various other committees we met with. Primarily, the big one being that along the southern edge of the site along Sagamore Creek, this whole area here is all salt marsh, which is really low-lying, undevelopable. It's heavily protected by state and local wetland regulations. That area is almost 50% of the entire lot area, and that 50% is still included in our total lot calculation for the community space. So we were already working from an area where we needed to provide a lot of community space where we have a lot of undevelopable land that we can't use for that community space. Additionally, in working with the Conservation Commission, it was requested that we not include the area between the 0 and 25-foot buffer of the site in our community space calculation. The feeling was that area on this particular site is a really steep embankment, and we weren't really proposing any enhancements to those areas, so that it wasn't something that they felt was could be considered in community space. So the community space is primarily between the 25-foot and 100-foot buffer. It runs from there's a thinner connection on a sidewalk out at Lafayette Road to get to that area. Primary reason that's so skinny there is there's a NHDOT drainage easement right there that we had to stay out of as well. So the community space goes along the sidewalk to get out to this area along the top of the bank. It includes a wood chip path, which is an allowed use within the wetland buffer. It runs along the top of the bank, wraps around the corner here, and then we have an ending here, which we sort of envision as a little overlook area, maybe have a couple seats, benches out there. And then again, as I mentioned previously, the community space does extend all the way out to the eastern property. We don't want to extend the path out there at this point because it is just a dead end and to property we don't control, but the thought was that in the future, if that ever gets developed, that path could be continued along the bank of the creek. So for the development site conditional use permit, we're required to meet 4 criteria that are listed in the zoning ordinance. The first criteria is that the development project is consistent with the Portsmouth Master Plan. So we had listed several goals in the Portsmouth Master Plan that this project meets, including goal 1.2, which is to encourage walkable mixed-use development along commercial corridors. Goal 2.1, which is to ensure that new development complements and enhances its surroundings. Goal 2.3 is to maintain and establish usable public access to and along the waterfront. And as I just discussed, we feel this community space really meets that goal. And goal 5.3 to promote effective stewardship and enhance the city's natural resources. And action 5.3.2 under goal 5.3 says to protect and care for existing trees, native vegetation, and woodlands, and identify areas for new planting. So we're proposing to do a lot of invasive species removal along the top of the bank, as well as the community trail to provide that access to these areas. Criteria 2 states that the development project has been designed to allow uses that are appropriate for its context and consistent with the city's planning goals and objectives for the area. We have designed the project to be complementary to the abutting uses. The residential buildings are an allowed use within this zone, and the addition of the public access is consistent with goals laid out in the city's master plan as previously described. Criteria 3 is that the project includes measures to mitigate or eliminate anticipated impacts on traffic safety, circulation, demand on municipal services, stormwater runoff, natural resources, and adjacent neighborhood character. As I previously mentioned, we had prepared a full traffic study, which has been reviewed by DOT, and then this project will have a negligible impact on traffic to the surrounding areas. The development site has been designed to mitigate stormwater runoff with the use of detention and filtration treatment practices. And the proposed project is a significant improvement over existing conditions, as there's no stormwater treatment currently on site. And then the fourth criteria is that the project is consistent with the purpose and intent set forth in section 10.5B11. And that goes on to state that the purpose of Article 5B is to implement, support the goals of the city's master plan and housing policy to encourage walkable mixed-use development and continued economic vitality in the city's primary gateway areas. And we had addressed, those criteria as part of, or those goals as part of criteria 1 under the CUP requirements. I can't remember what I put after this. I think it's, might be back to the, yeah. So the second conditional use permit is for work within the wetland buffer. This site has jurisdictional wetland areas, including 2,782 linear feet of tidal wetlands and buffers along the Sagamore Creek. A conditional use permit for wetland buffer impact will be required for this project for work within the 100-foot buffer. Proposed work within the 100-foot wetland buffer for this project is limited to the removal of existing impervious surfaces, the existing leach field and septic tank, and the restoration and enhancement of these areas with native grasses, shrubs, trees, and then finally the construction of the stormwater outlet for the new treatment system is also located within the buffer. And we did receive a recommendation of approval from the Conservation Commission in November of last year. As I had mentioned previously, we are removing almost 12,000 square feet of impervious surface from the buffer. And again, along with the landscape and planting plan, we'll be enhancing and restoring that buffer to a more native state. Granting a conditional use permit for work in a wetland buffer needs to meet the 6 criteria laid out in the zoning ordinance. Criteria 1 is the land is reasonably suited to the use, activity, or alteration. The land is currently a previously disturbed site that consists of the former WHEB radio station building. The proposed project design is an allowed use within the Gateway Neighborhood Mixed-Use District, and the proposed project consists of previously disturbed tidal buffer areas, which has historically been used as a commercial area. Work to be performed under the conditional use permit it includes the removal of existing impervious surfaces, the leach field, septic tank, restoration and enhancement of those areas, and the stormwater outlet. 2, there is no alternative location outside the wetland buffer that is feasible and reasonable for the proposed use, activity, or alteration. The placement of the proposed buildings and parking areas was done in a manner to remove all impervious surfaces within the 25, 50, and 100-foot tidal buffers, and proposes replacing those impervious surfaces with native grasses, native trees, and shrubs. 3, there will be no adverse impact on wetland functional values of the site or surrounding properties. There will be no adverse impact on the wetland functional values of the site as the existing condition is previously disturbed. And the proposed project is removing those impervious surfaces and restoring them as previously discussed. The proposed project also includes the added value of creating public open space for recreation along the upland bank of the creek. Criteria 4 is the alteration of the natural vegetative state or managed woodland will occur only to the extent necessary to achieve construction goals. And the proposed project design proposes minimal alteration to the natural woodland to the greatest extent practical. This alteration includes the removal of invasive species and the construction of the Woodchip Greenway Community Trail, which is an allowed use. The construction of the Woodchip Trail is intended to minimize the disturbance of the natural vegetative state by field aligning the proposed trail around existing large native trees. The criteria 5, the proposal is the alternative with the least adverse impact to areas and environments under the jurisdiction of this section. The proposed project does not have an adverse impact on the site as it would enhance the buffer by improving water quality through stormwater treatment and providing public access along the upland bank of the Sagamore Creek. Again, with all the impervious surfaces being removed from that buffer area. And 6, any area within the vegetated buffer strip will be returned to a natural state to the extent feasible. And as I've mentioned several times now, the impervious surfaces that are within that 25-foot buffer are all being removed and restored. So that is all I have, and we will be happy to answer any questions.
Just a housekeeping thing. I didn't want to interrupt your reading the presentation, but we need a motion to consider them together and vote on them separately, so we don't have to have one hearing. So just
So moved.
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now, questions to the applicant for either part of the proposal? Yes, Greg.
121 out of 109 required, that's great. Parking spaces. Do you have designated parking spaces for the public use for the Greenway?
Nothing that will be specifically signed, but the intent would be that the spaces inside the buildings would be reserved for residents and everything else will be sort of fair game.
Okay. The second question was, you mentioned the word control. Oh, go ahead, Andrew. I'm good.
Andrew?
Is this, with respect to the entire parcel and the site that we are considering tonight, are those going to remain one piece of land, one parcel legally and?
Yes, we're not proposing any subdivision currently.
Okay. And so with that, is there any change to the, if this is, we can call it a flagpole shape, and you are developing the pole of that, is the flag part of that, the upper northeast rectangle portion, changing at all?
No, not as part of this.
So with that, and for any future connectivity for whether that's conservation, community space, development, what have you, is anybody going to be able to access that, or are residents here
It
going to
will
be able to
be-
walk through?
You're referring to the upper area?
Yes.
It will be gated.
Okay, so
So
that's,
there is an access road up there for the tower,
yeah.
but it will be gated and no one should be going up there.
And the tower will become non-functional, but still
No, the
physical.
tower is still functional.
Still functional.
And will remain.
I see. Okay, so it's really effectively blocked off both for residents and public.
Yes.
And then to dovetail off Greg's question, those spaces, it's great to have the resident dedicated spaces, but what stops a resident from having 2 or 3 cars and parking them in the guest spaces and kind of consuming that?
That would be something that they would have to manage as the property manager. It would be something that would have to be within a lease or,
Sure.
it'd be on the owner and property manager to deal with that.
Okay.
Just one quick clarification, Neil. You said one parcel, but I think the tower is actually on a separate triangular parcel, isn't it?
So, there's this little triangle right here that one of the guy wires for the tower goes into. Both of these parcels are under common ownership, and we are using a portion of this little triangle lot as for community space. But we did include the area of that lot in the overall community space calculation.
Technically, it's 2 parcels,
Yes,
and the community space goes over both.
yes.
Okay. Greg, you had your hand up, and then Jim, and then Joe.
Yeah, so this is going to be a sensitive subject, but I was out there today, and it's completely obvious that there's a lot of transient traffic from the adjacent commercial parcel up a path across your property, past the tower, into the woods where people live.
Yes. Is there a question?
Well, the question is you've got that border, if you own all of this, that seems to be a difficult, that's where the community space is that you're claiming, but yet back there, I'm not sure the community wants to go back there. And then further to that, we recently had an application where there was a similar path like this along a property, which is very nice, by the way, and it's cool view. But they were proposing low-mounted, down shining lights along a path just like this, which would enhance safety for not only the public, but the residents that might want to walk along there. And it might also be a deterrent for traffic along that newly created path that gives a perfectly good destination of where they're going right now.
So I guess a couple things there. First, we feel that by developing the front of this lot will help discourage some of that from happening. That is something that the police are very much aware of. and
They were there today when I
go
was
up
there. Yeah,
regularly.
they were there today when I was there.
As far as the path, we do intend to put hours on the community space so that it is not open after dark for public use. Part of that is going through Conservation Commission. They don't want to have lighting within the buffer. So if it's not lit, we don't want people there after dark.
Jim?
Yes, Mr. Henson, I was noticing the site will offer more parking than the Portsmouth requires. I was just curious why the owners are willing to go through that extra expense to provide more parking that's needed.
I mean, we're exceeding it by, I believe, 14 spaces, 12 spaces?
Yeah, 12, I think, yeah.
So a couple of thoughts to that is we do have a leasing office, so we're going to want to have extra spaces for people coming in, potentially leasing. And then we do have the 4 EV spaces, so if they're, potentially those could be unoccupied for an extended period of time. So we don't, it's not a lot of extra. And then it also provides opportunity for people coming to use the path that don't live there to have some spaces. So it's a little bit extra, but it's nothing that's, that we think that having that little bit extra is an enhancement to the site.
Okay, thank you.
Could we pull up sheet C105, the photometric sheet? I want to elaborate a bit more on Vice Chair Mahana's question about lighting on that backside. I had the same question, and I'm wondering, even for the residents themselves, if they want to go out there, it's really darkness, and how are you satisfying the code requirements for lighting on those rear doors? Have they kind of has the Conservation Commission put you in a corner where you can have no light back there at all? I mean, you're required to have some lighting on each.
Yeah, there will probably need to be some sort of security lighting. But I think the intent would be that it wouldn't be to light, it would just be whatever is needed for building code requirements. Okay. I would imagine that's something that would come up during the building permit process. Yeah. But the intent would not be to light that rear path, either the one up along the rear of the buildings for the residents or the community space path.
Yeah, and I had the same thought. It's an awfully inviting place to be.
Well, not only that, the topography, like he said, the reason that they're putting it back there is it drops 10 feet plus, which is great for the flooding, but a bad place to have your dog go.
Yeah.
So the community space trail, so the bottom of the bank, so the salt marsh elevation basically is at elevation 6. The community space trail is at about elevation 14, so it's about 8 feet up. And then the sidewalk along the rear of the buildings is between elevation 19 and 20. So it's there's 2 step ups from the salt marsh up to the buildings.
It's like a cliff walk almost.
Yeah, I think it could be, without
Yeah.
making the Conservation Commission mad, you could do the same type of stuff that we did, which condo complex was it on Route 1? Just real,
Cedars?
Yeah, dark sky compliant, down lights.
Well, the idea is
Thank you,
also not
Beth.
to put the light.
It was spring.
Anyhow, I'm just thinking from a safety standpoint, because I was out there today, and it drops off like crazy. It's like.
They were going to mount those on the building, though.
They were. But that would be worse for Conservation Commission.
So clearly, this is something for, I bring it up as a point of interest, and it'll have to be managed by the owners. but-
Yeah.
Building department.
Yeah.
Would
Go
would
ahead.
the applicant be willing to put, just as a point of discussion, put in lighting on the path that put the lighting toward the buildings. I think the issue is not shining light on the salt marsh. As I understand it, you don't want to shine light towards the amphibians and the other critters.
Are you referring to the community space path? Or
That's the one I was referring to,
Okay,
but
'cause
either one, because both,
The owner does not want to have people on the community space path after dark.
how about on the other, on your path?
The sidewalk on the rear of the building, I think, is a different discussion, and I think that we'd be open to doing something there, but not on the community space trail.
My initial statement was that the lighting on the community use path would keep people off of it in the middle of the night.
Good evening, Patrick Crowns with Time On. So the community space trail, it resides in nature. It's like sitting in the, it's much like the trails that you see out behind the high school. The intent is not to have those lit so that, you know, it's not being used in the evening. That is why we're not lighting it. Certainly, the applicant is open to lighting that path that is closer to the buildings. But where that is literally within wooded areas, we're not looking to introduce light there.
Okay. And then just one more question. Again, just out of curiosity, was last weekend's King Tide observed, and how did it affect your site? It's just out of curiosity.
Not affected.
Great. Great.
So do you know the demographics of the people that are going to be living here? And particularly in the context, this doesn't seem to be a playground. I would assume there'd be small children. I don't think there's any playground, you know, anywhere walkable from there. So
I don't know the answer to that. I'm a civil engineer.
Andrew, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, within the traffic analysis, the collision history was not reported because the police department had staffing shortages. Has that come back since you submitted this application?
I don't know.
Would be pretty interesting. Obviously, a traffic analysis is very helpful. NHDOT gave you their blessing, which is also really constructive. It's just like that stretch alone with two signaled intersections can still get pretty hectic. You have the entrance to the Mobile, entrance to the Dunkin' Donuts, which in the morning hours, 6:30 to 7:30, queues up and can go into the southbound lanes. And so as I'm thinking and visualizing it, when that northbound red light, or the northbound light is red, it's a thought, and as I've previously stated on this board, I'm not an engineer, but it might be a thought to have a do not block intersection type box in front of your driveway. If you've had feedback on that type of aspect, maybe it's helpful, just to prevent people from sitting in the middle of the left lane.
Yeah, so I mean, it's, the roadway is controlled by DOT, and the only comment we got from them is that they did not recommend any lane reconfigurations as part of this project. So that's all we can really go on at this point.
Would be interesting to see that collision history.
Since nobody else asked it, what are the thoughts or what feedback did you get in looking at this as far as people turning left out of that driveway?
That's what I'm asking.
You're talking about blocking it so people could turn left in.
No.
I'm talking about left out.
going out. Excuse me if that wasn't clear.
Wasn't clear to me.
Apologize.
Yeah, there was no issues that came up in the traffic analysis related to queuing times for any of the intersections we looked at, one of them being the driveway to the site.
I guess my concern is people trying to get out at night, especially. Those roads get really busy. I spend a lot of time in that neighborhood on the roads because I work near there. It would be really nice to know whether or not you've explored any possibility of a cut through into the neighbor's parking lot to be able to go out to the light. Has that been discussed or even explored?
It's been thought about, and for a variety of reasons, we've chosen not to pursue it.
And this is definitely going to be leased property so that there's actually an owner or a management company that'll be taking care of the maintenance.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Well, this isn't a deal breaker. It might be a question for your architect. Your architect is here?
No, the architect is not here.
Okay, well, how visible are the buildings going to be from the south?
From Route 1, you mean? I I would imagine pretty visible. They sit up.
I think we asked for that at the work session.
We've talked about it. I'm just, again, this is an aesthetic concern, a bit beyond my ken, but that rear elevation with the white buildings, it's not, it's going to be an interesting image from a gateway perspective, and I think you should give some thought to maybe toning it down a little bit. I think you might, when I was looking at it in plan, it's going to be a wall of white, and with some breakup with your different siding materials, but
Yeah, that's certainly feedback we can bring to the architect.
I mean, this is called a gateway, and those buildings don't look like the apartment buildings in the gateway part of the zoning ordinance. But again, I'm not trying to make a deal breaker here, I'm just commenting, that's going to be quite an image.
And just speak to that briefly. FX Bruton and Barrowby for the applicant. The actual elevations are not all white, so there is a breakup between that. And we're not married to white. So if there's a suggestion that would make the board more comfortable, we're more than happy to explore it. We're just looking, I don't know, do you have that elevation or is it in the
I can
slides?
pull it up from the.
Yeah. It looks white, but it's actually technically not all white. But again, we're certainly willing to chat about it and I'd make sure it's
I'm just concerned about how it will be seen
Yeah.
by the public, and you don't want bad.
no, we
Bad
don't. And we
reaction.
respect what you're suggesting because we'd like to have it look nice. Obviously, it's the spot that you want to see.
I've looked at these a lot.
So there's a different tone there, and obviously, at night, with the lack of the lighting, kind of almost disappears. Obviously, there's lights in the windows and all that. But we're not married to that presentation, so if there's a suggestion, and I'm not we're not all architects, I guess, but we're more than happy to consider something like a little darker tone, if you'd like, or something like that.
Well, I'm not suggesting, even though there is authority for aesthetic issues with the planning board, I'm not saying this is something I'd suggest as a condition, but I wanted the board to consider it. And we do
Yeah.
have an architect on our board, so, if he's very comfortable with it, maybe I'm just
Taller trees?
overreacting. But it's going to be,
It's going to stick above the trees.
Well, to your point, I mean, like the Westerly as an example, it blends into the trees behind it. Yes,
it's
they
dark.
had the ability to put some trees in front of it where these guys cannot, towards the water, obviously. But the darker colors
The
really.
black and the dark gray really do
it-
blend
it
into the
blends
site, and you
into the
almost don't
site,
notice.
So you
there.
drive by it without saying, what the heck was that?
Maybe a darker trim color to accent with the other color that's there would.
We
would-
do, I mean, one thing is we do have a lot of plantings along the water as well. I mean, obviously, first few years, it's not going to be growing up, but as those mature and get taller, the screening will only get.
I just think with the
more
elevation
than a
change,
few
that'll be
years.
hard.
I think what we're really reacting to is a lot of the stuff we're reading, public comments, that it's just gonna be like, boom, a big refrigerator on the hill if you're coming down the hill from past McDonald's. Pardon my way of describing it, but if you're coming down a hill past McDonald's, it's gonna look like, what the heck is that big refrigerator box over there?
One of the considerations was obviously to address the existing conditions, which obviously you can see as well, and get everything out of the area and really preserve that vista of more the water aspects to this. And, something obviously is going to be there at some point. And this, we kind of brought intentionally as far as we could up closer to the shopping center. So in a sense, visually, we're hoping that it kind of blends in as more of that project, even though it's different, and then really create that buffer between the buildings and what we did. And so everything we did was to push that as far as we could right up to that limit of the other project, of the existing project. But again, if, we'll take these thoughts if they're not conditions and, or if we don't come up with some suggestion, we'll certainly work with the staff to see if there's anything that they can add to that. But in any event, I'll yield to your point.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that that no one here is making a decision based on the idea that these might hide in any way. These are very, very, I'm not against the project at all.
Yeah.
I'm supportive of this, but these will be seen from great distances, and there's 3 of them in a row.
Right.
So the elevations that we're seeing, you multiply this impact times 3 in your head. I mean, there are ways to tone it down, but the other things we're not seeing on here, which they're not really required to show, but are, mechanical rooftop units, penetrations through the roofs, pipes and vents and so forth sticking out that also would be very detracting from the clean lines. But just make no mistake about it, this is a very large, this is going to loom over the water. It will. And I'm saying that as a supporter of the project. It meets the requirements, and, it's a large lot, and it's.
Yeah, we're not trying to hide
Yeah.
the buildings,
Yeah.
clearly.
I just want to make sure everyone was thinking that in some way. A
Well,
few
let me,
trees
let me make my point clear. I support this project as
Yeah.
well. I'm not trying to cause a problem. And
Yep.
I'll help you with, because your architect isn't here, these buildings don't look like the apartment building under our zoning ordinance, but it's also the character of that neighborhood. Like, as you said, your neighbors aren't exactly village-oriented. So
No.
that I get, but, a color scheme more like the new buildings across from the Hannaford, something darker tones would really make a huge difference, I think, because there's also that large natural area on the other side of the salt marsh
Right.
where people, go to experience nature, and what you're doing is a great thing, bringing housing to the city, and let's keep it like that and
Yeah.
not have people focus on, boy, that really just, the
darker-
visual impact is too much.
Darker earth tones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could do
Natural-
darker
natural
earth tones,
colors.
then I
Makes
think that
sense.
would make a huge
Happy
difference.
to do that.
And it wouldn't cost you anything.
Nope,
Change the color.
we agree.
Yes, Andrew.
I have one last question. In the green energy statement, it alludes to a roof deck. Do we know if there's a literal roof deck, or is it just one of the structures of the roof?
I don't believe there's a roof deck.
It has individualized heating components for each unit?
It's just, utilities.
Okay, so,
It's what? What did you say, Neil? I didn't.
It's for utilities.
for utilities. And so to dovetail off of Joe's point about roof penetrations and things of that like, it's a rubber membrane roof with a small slope and penetrations for drainage and whatnot. It would be wonderful to see some solar panels over there, if there's an ability to do so, and if the buildings allow for it, we'd love to see that.
Okay.
Great.
Would you accept the note, this could be a condition, I think you explained it, but it's not on the site plan, that the dedication for the future pathway connection, in the event that the future connection to the east becomes available, then it would be made available?
Yes. I don't know if it's noted on the plan, but we would be happy to add that because that is the intent.
Okay, I didn't see it on the plan, maybe I missed it. So the idea is it would currently stop at your turnaround.
Yes.
From the turnaround to the east boundary would just be a dedication, only to be used in the event that a connection to the east becomes available.
Yes, and that can also be part of the community space easement when that gets written.
I think you're looking for it, so,
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's there unless it's in a completely different section.
okay.
But yeah, we would be happy to add that.
Any other questions of the applicant for either the site plan, conditional use, any aspects?
I have a question.
Yes.
The the application says that it's for the demolition of the existing building and tower, but did I hear earlier that the tower will not be?
There
Two
was,
different towers.
there was a second tower on the site that is already gone.
Okay, so the one that's there,
The big one that is there is not being removed.
okay.
It's behind the strip mall.
These units are in the fallaway zone for that tower, if that tower were to,
I don't know specifically. They're
It's a big tower.
Definitely.
It's probably gonna hit Route 1 if it falls down.
there's no residential under it now, but
Yeah, I don't know the height of the tower, so I
It's tall.
can't answer.
If it fell west, it would land on them.
Have you run across that before, Paul? Is that
I'm sorry?
have you run across a fall zone for a tower, is that an issue?
Yeah, I don't recall seeing residential underneath a tower that could potentially fall. But, cell phone towers and so forth are usually have a zone, that's equal or exceeding the height, but it's been there a long time, that tower, and it's pretty well anchored and so forth, but I just clarifying because
How come when it's never moved?
as the application, as I read it, called for the demolition of the tower. I was expecting that tower that I still see out there coming down, but I'm learning now that it's not.
Yeah, it was the smaller radio tower that was near the building.
Okay.
So it sounds like we might need a clarification that it either is not in the fall zone or the fall zone is not an issue, which sounds like something staff could work out, maybe?
Sure.
Could just make it something to be looked into. Just to
Okay with
ensure
that.
that
If it is
the
a
residents
problem-
of the building will be safe.
Hopefully it's not a problem. Any other questions on either part of the application? Ready for public hearing? Thank you. We'll open the public hearing. Anybody here or on Zoom who wishes to speak to, for, or against this application? Anybody on?
If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. No hands.
One more call, here or on Zoom. There was a delay one time. 3, 2, 1. Going to close the public hearing. We have two parts of this application. Who would like to?
I'll take it on. I'll make a motion, we vote to find the conditional use permit application meets the criteria set forth in section 10.1017 and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
Wouldn't we want it as amended with 2.1 through 2.4?
2.1 through 2.4 is in the next vote. This is just the findings of fact.
Okay, gotcha.
The lighting of the upper path, I guess we decided not to make that a condition, right? Leave that up to
Well, that would be on site plan anyways.
Yeah, I know. I'm just getting ahead, but reminding folks. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Findings?
Then we'd make a motion to vote, to grant the wetland conditional use permit with the included conditions 2.1 through 2.4.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I make a motion vote to find that the conditional use permit application meets the criteria set forth in section 10.5B43.10 and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I make a motion we vote to grant the conditional use permit for a development site subject to the requirements and conditions of site plan review approval.
Second.
Discussion? There's one more vote, right?
Right.
There's,
Okay.
yes, we're not done.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No? No-
All
no
right.
Opposition. That was not a no.
No.
It does sound like you're opposed to
Yeah,
every.
I know. No, sorry, that's why I clarified it. You told me that once before.
You want me to keep going?
Yes.
Make a motion to vote to find that the site plan application meets the requirements set forth in Site Plan Regulations, Section 2.9, evaluation criteria, and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second that as well.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Then I will make a motion that we vote to grant the site plan approval with the following conditions. And included in the conditions subsequent to final approval, we would like to add condition 2.5, that the applicant, in conjunction with city staff, looks into the fall zone of the tower residing on the east side of the property to ensure safety of the residents.
Second.
Have a discussion there. I'd like to commend the applicant for designing this project completely out of the buffer. I think that was a great design option for the site.
What about an additional condition about the dedication of the future connection for the community path?
We certainly can add that. What, I guess, I know that happened the other night too.
That area that's shown in the easement will be in the community space easement, but their path is just going to end where they've shown it.
So there'll be a community space easement
That will extend all the way,
so that the entire,
right.
Right.
And so if there's future development on the adjacent parcel or opportunity to create a trail, we'll have that easement already. The city will have it.
So I guess we don't really need
we
one.
don't need it.
Yeah. The other night, there was a lot of
Are you
flickering
fixing
lights. I thought there was
the
ghosts in the
lighting?
room.
Just a slight, the dimmer switch is causing LEDs to flicker. Sometimes it's very annoying.
Any other discussion on the motion with the one amendment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are no opposed.
That's it. That was all of them.
Thank you.
Thank you. By request of HCA Health Services of New Hampshire, doing business as Portsmouth Regional Hospital, and CO Ducharme McMillan Associates as owners, excuse me, for property located at 333 Borthwick Avenue, requesting an amended site plan approval to amend the conditions of approval from July 21, 2022. This property is located in Assessor's Map 240, Lot 2-1, and lies in the Office Research or OR District. Who is here to present this application?
Good evening. My name is Matthew Hamby with Bowman Consulting. Thank you, Chairman, for introduction. So we were here July 27th of 2022 for amended site plan for the radiation oncology expansion at Portsmouth Regional Hospital. That project is now complete and ready for a certificate of occupancy to begin staff training in preparation to see patients. As noted, there was a couple conditions of approval for that amended site plan, which was to dredge the wetlands from Borthwick back around the helipad to the O2 or med gas tanks there to the plan north. That has not been completed yet. It is still under investigation, and they're currently surveying it right now. So that has not been completed. And that is holding up, as I stated, the certificate of occupancy. And so we are here tonight to ask to amend the July 27, 2022 condition of approval to dredge and as-built, which is condition 2.8, as-built, that dredging condition, to remove that from the minutes and to establish a condition 2.9, which is to begin a separate site agreement and a new bond with HCA to see that dredging get completed. The applicant is not trying to get out of dredging those wetlands. It's just a very long process that has a lot of different parties involved and just cannot be done in the duration of construction with a complete building at this point. So,
Questions of the applicant?
Not a question, just seems very reasonable. Obviously, we all want to see this facility up and running for
Right.
for the region, yeah.
Bill?
I've got a question on the bonding. To what extent, what's the relation between the size of the bond and the potential cost of doing the dredging?
So the original bond for the project was based on construction cost of the radiation oncology project. So that bond will be closed out. There'll be a new bond started. I think the condition of approval doesn't necessarily state the origin or the cost of that bond, but typically it's 100% of the construction cost, so that if the work is not done, the bond could be called and the work could be completed. I don't know the exact cost of what that bond will be posted for this.
It's some slight amount over the anticipated cost of doing the dredging?
That would be my anticipation, yes, sir.
I'll field this to both the applicant as well as the chair. Is there an ability to get an estimated timeline, or at least something that we can bound this by?
Yeah, so the planning board application that we filed for this amendment, so we kind of give a breakdown of what's happened really since the project got through amended site plan, started construction, to where we are now, and kind of our forecast moving forward. So that the target, we think we can be done by, April of 2025, but there is a provision, the state permitting, all that can take longer than what we anticipate at this point. So I think there is a provision to get through December of 2025. I don't know if it shows up in this one, but it shows up in the staff memo.
So you have yet to apply for those state permits?
Correct, yeah, we're surveying the condition. It's been a very long process with Public Works.
Sure.
A lot of those files have never been scanned in, so it's both file research here locally, but also at the state level to understand the origin of the wetlands. What are the implications from the state?
Yes, Greg.
But in your application, you said that somebody erroneously figured it was a add-on to the original dredge permit, which was there when it was built, and that was denied by DES, correct? There was an original dredge permit issued, and you guys thought you could piggyback onto that as a maintenance. I'm familiar with dredging.
Yes.
But they denied that.
Correct. So we're working with Gov Environmental locally. They're working on a lot. He couldn't be here tonight, but correct. We applied and are still trying to make the case of why this could be a maintenance dredge.
Right.
Because this was a man-made.
It was a pre-approved dredging.
Correct.
And maintenance is a follow-on to an original dredge permit.
Correct. But yes, exactly. So now we're trying to figure out, is there grounds to call this a maintenance dredge and essentially have no state permitting, or it's like all or another. It's either a maintenance dredge or it's 9 months of state Army Corps.
You either start over or you can do maintenance.
Correct.
So if you start over, is there any, and I didn't see the dredge permit,
Sure.
but testing, any possibility it could be denied?
Well, the precedent's been set already because they dredged it in 1988. So that was something Public Works helped us dig up those drawings from 1988. That was Liberty Mutual, NHA, both show up on the plans as
Original permitters.
correct, exactly. So the precedent has already been there. We're just trying to recreate what was done in 1988.
I think everybody's concern is just that it's actually going to get done.
Correct.
Do you need a Corps of Engineers permit as well?
That is part of the major permit, correct?
And isn't the reason you need this permit is because the prior owners, I guess, didn't follow through with the maintenance they should have been doing along the way?
Good question. We don't necessarily know who's at fault. I mean, we know that it was dredged in 1988, and that's about all we know.
Somebody hasn't done it since who probably should have.
Correct. Lack of maintenance, jetting of the culverts, number of things.
It's an interesting discussion with us because we always issue these permits with continuing maintenance, but there's no oversight. Sorry, stump speech.
That's what bonds can be for, to a certain point. My concerns are making sure due diligence, you follow through.
Correct.
And not holding up the opening of this important facility, because obviously that is very important from a health perspective. And I wonder if the December 2025, I think that was the time, the deadline,
That was, yeah.
Right.
if it should be, as soon as the permits are, or the permit should be pursued with due diligence and have that be an upset date, or, not later than. That seems like enough time, in my experience, to get those permits. and
Absolutely.
That's why you came up with it, I'm sure.
Correct. Yep.
I just wouldn't want you to get your ability to open the facility and then you get fired and, it
Everybody
continues
forget
for
about
another
this.
30
Yeah,
years.
correct. Well, the local leadership's here, HCA Construction is here. I mean, I think everyone here is committed to holding up their end of the bargain to make sure that this maintenance is, done and done properly moving forward.
Yes, that's the purpose of the bond.
Correct.
Yes.
Not all of it functioning properly benefits them as well. They want to, they want to see this function properly around their facilities.
It is impacting Liberty Mutual property too, as you well know, so.
Correct, yes. And they're committed to being good neighbors, so I think that's certainly a big part of the origin of the request.
Any other questions, discussion? This is not a public hearing, or this?
It is.
We would request, so the condition 2.9 is being proposed to be added. The site agreement and the bond will take a little bit of time to get reissued. We would ask that that is not a precursor to the certificate of occupancy being released for the current facility. We will in haste try to do the site agreement and bond as quickly as possible, but every day that the facility's not open is nurses that can't train and the building that can't get opened.
Okay, I'm with you on that, but how much time is needed?
2 weeks. I mean, did y'all talk timeline on the site agreement?
We did not. We had a conversation with Peter and Trevor on the amended site agreement. So as soon as we have that, we can sign it on our end and then get the bond pulled, because we're going to mimic the original bond from the first project. So all the formalities in place, we would just have to go get it issued from our side. So I would think 2 to 3 weeks max to get that once we have the site agreement in hand.
So 30 days, be safe?
To be fair. Yes, sir.
So if you're comfortable with the December 2025 upset date, the applicant will execute a new site review agreement for the completion of the dredging work within the next 30 days to be completed by December 2025. Does that work for you?
Yes, sir. I think our
Does
team's
that work-
confident.
Does that work for the board? I'm sort of
Sounds good.
proposing maybe more than I should, but go ahead.
I guess I have a question about the way this, in our memo, the vote is written for us, because I believe we're closing out the other one and not modifying a prior decision. We're removing something from that prior decision and creating a new decision. So I guess just the wording.
Well, the prior, or the current letter decision has prior to issuance of a CO.
Okay,
for
so we're
both.
monitoring to make
So
sure
we're
it's
making, so 2.6 will now be prior
after the
to-
issuance.
Right.
Okay, I guess that's where I was, the connection I was missing.
I guess I have a question about 2.8. We'll still want that engineered record,
Correct.
but maybe it will be in conjunction with the new site review agreement and
Correct.
bond
Yes.
for the dredging.
2.8 will follow 2.6.
Right.
That's verification that it was built
So
properly.
I want to make sure that's clear. That
I get it now. I get what we're doing now. Thank you.
So 2.6 is the prior bond.
No,
So
no, 2.6,
It's the new.
it currently was with the prior bond, but is going to be now with the new bond under condition 2.9.
do we need to have a vote to release the prior bond? Or did we have, just say that there'd be a new bond to substitute for the prior bond?
It's actually in 2.6, prior to the bond release in conjunction with the new site review agreement. So once the new site review agreement is in place, then they can release the bond. That's the way I read that.
Right. Release the current bond.
Well, I think
Correct.
that's more the way Peter said, because this is anticipating, 2.6 is anticipating the construction work being completed. And they've got a bond hanging over their head right now. that's going to be substituted with a new bond.
Correct.
So it's just a technical question. Do we need to vote to release that old bond? I'm just going to use a different term.
I don't think so, because bonds are released all the time without us voting for it.
Okay.
We're just amending so that the staff can then release it.
You don't feel you need us to do anything to release that bond? All right.
I think so. No, sir.
And 2.9 covers the new bond.
Correct. Yeah.
With a 30-day time limit within which to
Get
it
the
done.
agreement and release, yeah.
Okay?
You want to say within 30 days of approval?
Yes.
Or, you know, of tonight, basically?
Yes.
Again, that's acceptable.
Yes, sir.
The motion to that effect.
Yeah. Do we put that in the vote,
Wait,
or
do
do we
we-
put
did
it in
you-
the condition?
Offer any public hearing?
Oh,
Yeah, we have
right.
a public
I
hearing.
asked for
I
a
don't know
public
that there
hearing,
is.
and then I
Yes,
didn't.
you are right.
didn't-
We need a
so
public
Thank
hearing.
you very much, no open public hearing.
There's so
Public
few
hearing
people here. I
Open,
forget.
anybody here or on Zoom wish to speak to, for, or against this application? That does include any of the people in the room. Anybody-
No one on Zoom has.
Last call, anybody wish to speak to, for, or against this application? We'll close the public hearing. Now.
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we vote to modify the prior conditions of approval 2.6 and 2.8 from the letter of decision date July 27th, 2022, and add condition 2.9. And what else am I adding?
For 2.9, it will say, for the completion of the dredging work.
Bond.
wi-
Right.
Well, the applicant will execute a new site review agreement for the completion of the dredging work within 30 days, within the next 30 days, to be completed by December 25th, so.
Yeah, add that in.
Second?
Any discussion? Is everybody clear? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You're good. Good luck. I'm going, do we need a quick break?
I'm just going to go to the bathroom. You keep talking.
We have a workshop next week. Everybody remembers that, right?
Thursday night?
Thursday night. I would like to start earlier, our workshops. And by the way, I'm jumping ahead now. We have, because of what the council is doing, we're going to have some workshops coming up the next couple of months probably, maybe more. So historically, they have been held at 6 or 6:30. If we have them at 6, we can get out here a little early. That might crowd people's dinner time, but, I mean, if folks are good with 6, should we go with 6?
Yes.
That makes sense? Okay, let's go with 6.
It's a week from today?
That's a
Yes.
week from today. And that is the next thing on the agenda, the solar energy panel amendment. There was some discussion about it last night at the council meeting. I met with Reagan Rudig, the chair of the HDC, today to talk about this, and she thinks her commission is looking forward to working with us. The council has asked that our board work with the commission to try to come up with a proposal to bring back to the council. And once we have done that, then I expect as many of you as want to come to the council with me, and it would probably be Reagan and myself presenting to council and answering questions, but to show that we've worked on this as a group, and see if they've come up with anything else they wish to ask. I think if we get into the solar panel amendment discussion, we may want to consider outside the HDC. I don't know, we'll see how the conversation goes, because I think it's probably two different sets of criteria, inside and outside the historic district. But the focus is certainly within the historic district. That's our primary concern here. Trevor has worked on this already. I'm not sure if he will continue to work on it or somebody else in the legal department will work with us to help. But I think we can probably make pretty good progress on this fairly quickly. It's an important topic, and one of the counselors last night said that he didn't know if there was a way to make sure that buildings had other energy improvements, such as proper insulation and other things before you installed a solar panel. I got the impression there might be some folks desiring that. I know a way to do that if the board wants and the commission wants to do that, so we can talk about that at the workshop. Next week, be for us to talk about this in electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging stations. Given that the HDC component has been added to our workload, Reagan wasn't comfortable asking her commission with 1 week's notice to come next week, so we're going to have another workshop with them just on solar. I'm not sure when that date will be, but when everybody get polled, we'll find a time. I know council is anxious to get some feedback on this, and
Yes, we are.
it's a good thing to do that, so we'll do it. Yes, Bill?
On the vehicles, are there best practices? It seems a little bit like we're inventing something that.
Well, funny you should ask that. I've done some research on it. There are several best practices, and other communities have done it. I will give staff what I've found for circulation before next week, so folks can read it. Some things that are missing, when you propose an ordinance for things, you want to allow widgets. Well, you should define what widgets are. And, people think they know what a level 1, level 2, and level 3 charging station is, but levels 1 and 2, it's pretty consistent what they are. They're pretty much residential based. It's what you plug in at your house, either in the wall or by a dryer. Level 3, there's a lot of differentiation about what those are. They're a lot more commercial, and I think we need to give some consideration to how they're defined. There's just a lot more to them. And there's 2 different types now. There's DC and non-DC, so we can talk about that. But yes, we'll see what other people have done, because I think that's always a good place to start. Rather than invent the wheel, we can see what other people are rolling with.
Rick, we had a lengthy public comment in our package on this subject. Are we just going to hold that till next
Yes,
week?
if you can hold that.
I was wondering about that. Thank you.
Please read all those comments. And if you want to talk about any of it tonight, we can a little bit. But
No, we read it, but it was interesting that whoever did that did a lot of research, a lot of pictures and everything like that, but they didn't differentiate the historic district versus the rest of the South End.
Yeah, I saw that too.
One of the things that I do know from the research I've done, and one of the concerns I had with the discussion a few weeks ago, I've found in some jurisdictions that miscreants, for lack of a better term, have used the idea of solar access to make structural changes to historic buildings that they couldn't otherwise do. And then it wasn't always really for a solar purpose. So we have to be careful about unintended consequences and just think about that as we proceed. Yes, Andy?
Yeah, so, that's a good point. That's a pretty great length and cost to consider, albeit probably not unheard of. And so to your point about have they made other efficiency upgrades in their historic home before considering solar panels, it's not always apples to apples, but it should be in the conversation in a way that we can at least propose it or at least suggest it. So much like the affordable housing stuff where Nick Cracknell said, at least have your hands on the wheel, that seems like a good concept to apply here as well.
Well, to follow on, energy audits are free.
Yes.
Energy audits are free. And if you're going to put solar panels on, but you have all your incandescent lights still and fluorescent lights without going to LED first, come on.
Yeah, and by no means are we trying to be the police necessarily, but maybe there are ways that we can incorporate some proactive measures that put some of the responsibility and burden on the homeowner prior to coming here and talking to us, or talking to the city for that matter, so that there's not only accountability, there's responsibility, and then at that point, we have all the data, and now they have all the data as well. It's like, okay, now we're talking face to face rather than someone playing
Right.
a
And
hidden
it's not,
card.
I'm not suggesting we burden the process in any way.
No.
But, and I know
No,
you're
but
not,
it-
I know you're not either, but just to make it clear, because in the unlikely event anybody actually watches this,
But again, to add to Andrew's, because I had a proposal done for my own house, and it would be nice that they show the analysis of the effectivity of the location and number of panels. Because if you're not facing the right way, if they're trying to put something ugly up that's gonna give 30% of their consumption, that's not as valid as 80% of their consumption.
And certainly not to beleaguer the point, and this could be naive, but like a traffic study is done by someone who is credible and has seen these things before. It also puts some parameters on it and constraints on it so that we're not always being discretionary, and we still have the ability to be discretionary, but it's a foundation for what we're talking about, right? So
Yeah.
not to be burdensome or the police, but just to give us a foundation.
Bookends.
well, the other reason for the planning board and the HDC to talk, there are certain things the planning board can do that the HDC can't, and vice versa.
Vice versa,
So
yeah.
there might be a way to find a way to meld things together better. And council hasn't voted on the budget yet, but there is a $50K allocation in there to update the HDC guidelines. So,
Oh, in the CIP.
yeah, I mean, that could get voted on this summer, I guess, right?
The CIP is voted on early in March, and then it's incorporated into the full budget, which will be voted on early June.
Yeah, so, summer, yeah.
Summer's not till June 21st.
Okay. Well, I'll check in with you on the 20th.
Late spring.
Just one last thing, although I don't like the way that this issue surfaced before us. I really think it was awkward the way it surfaced. I'm glad that it did, and I'm confident that between us and the HDC and the city council, we will definitely.
We'll figure it out.
100%.
We'll definitely figure this out.
100%.
Absolutely, we have the ability to figure this out.
It's kind of why I was the one that requested that the planning board meet with the HDC, and let's talk about both ends of the coin, and let's figure out where the happy medium is.
It was serendipity today because I just happened to text Reagan, who I'd never met before, and she was
She's a
having a
sweetheart.
meeting here, and so it happened. So it's all good, progress. And the mayor happened to be here too, so he's aware that communications have started. Jumping ahead some more, I did make some calls about Pease. I had a long conversation with Tim Roach from the Rockingham Planning Commission. I'm sure.
Oh, I know him quite
Remember
well.
us quite well. He's all for assisting. He made a suggestion unrelated to that, but related to our master plan, that we should consider $10,000 or $15,000 allocation of the budget for whoever the consultant is picked to give to the RPC, because consultants tend, especially master plan consultants, tend to abuse the access. So I made a note of that, and now I've made a note of it to you. So
I already knew.
we're all on the same page there. I didn't get calls back from some of the other folks. I'll continue to follow up. And I think we have the rules. Remember those? We started with these some very long time ago.
Yeah, but they're finally done, aren't they? We just have to vote on them?
They're ready to be voted on, in my opinion.
And it's only 8:30, we can actually do it.
I know.
That's why I didn't bring it up last month, because I didn't want to be here till whenever. So if you folks want to ask a question or anything, I don't want to.
I make a motion that we approve our planning board rules and procedures as they have been updated.
I'll second that.
Discussion or question, Bill?
I've just got a clarification question for me, that duplexes, that the state law would say that we do not have responsibility for duplexes. It's for 3 or more units, and 4 or more. But that's not mentioned this way in the rules, which is okay. but I just want to be sure that that people, developers or citizens who want to develop a duplex understand that it doesn't require the cost and time of the planning board.
You're referring to site plan review regulations?
Yes.
And those are on the list of things that I presented to this board. They're not going to remember back in October of 2021, I think.
I don't remember.
It's on Trevor's list, and it's something that he's going to be digging into. Right now, there are some duplex projects that are subject to the definition in site plan. There are some issues with that. You are correct. It's going to be fixed. But that's not a rules issue.
Okay.
So these do not affect that. It's a separate document. Any other questions, comments? We have a motion and a second to adopt these rules. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have the rules.
Wow.
Can't believe it. Already.
It's only taken us
A little over a year.
a year. That's not bad.
Anything else before I adjourn the meeting?
You have one more thing on here, don't you, Ever? Board
Regulatory
discussion on
amendments.
regulatory amendments, master plan scope, and other matters.
Well, that's what that's when I said I skipped ahead. I had noted the workshops for the HTC and electric vehicles. Other things that are still on my list, like the downtown overlay district, I think we need to talk about modifying that. But
I don't know if anyone paid attention to Mondays or Tuesdays. No, it was Monday. No, it was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday.
Tuesday city council meeting. I did bring forward, and we have referred to legal 36 properties that the land use committee had looked at to change to Gateway, and it's referred to the planning board for its February meeting. So hopefully legal will get it to us in time for that.
Right, I'm working on that.
And in that regard, we have, we're going to have a housing presentation with council on?
Yes, it's a combined, it's the 22nd. It's
22nd.
on our fourth Thursday is combined planning board and city council. We're getting the Portsmouth Listings housing, their next 4 weeks, all these groups, like over 100 people are meeting in groups, and they're going to give us their report back.
Small request, put the workshops on the city council, or on our calendar, like, on the
The
webpage.
the city clerk can do that, yeah.
Yeah.
If you ask the city
Yeah,
clerk.
somebody could ask or somebody to do that.
There's a few now.
Right.
Right, so we have, next week I didn't know about, but it's in my calendar.
That was kind of my point.
I knew about the 22nd because it was told to me on Tuesday.
Anything else?
I didn't understand it, but what's the timeline for the plan, for the master plan?
We haven't talked about that yet.
Good
It's a
question.
year.
We're starting at, the subcommittee has been delayed a little bit, but we're going to come back with a proposed RFP, RFQ for consultants and a timeline very soon.
The subcommittee's hard at work.
We'll
Is
have
that
a
you, Andrew?
timeline shortly to bring to the full board to talk about.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we adjourn, this may be my last planning board meeting. So I just want to let everyone know it's been a pleasure to work with you all and to serve our great city.
Thank you. Will you be here next week, perhaps?
That's a work session.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. But you, okay. Appreciate your service. If there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.